All right, well, as mentioned, the purpose of the summit is not just to educate the educators, but also the industry. Institutions often actually have a very good idea for what the industry needs, yet they need to operate under a range of regulatory and funding constraints. These frameworks are often there for a reason. Their aim is to ensure the quality of education in this country, but they can also pose a challenge in terms of flexibility and the ability to react to trends. I'm very pleased to welcome today Neil Boyd from AIE and Justin Carter from the University of the Sunshine Coast, who will discuss this in more detail. Before we start, can I please ask you to introduce yourself? Neil, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Neil. I'm the head of school at AIE Sydney, and I've been working in vocational education for AIE for the last 20 years as a teacher, as a curriculum developer, and as somebody that sort of has had input into accredited courses and training packages as well.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And Justin, over to you.
Thanks, Neil and Jens. So I'm Justin Carter, and I've, similar to Neil, I've worked for about 2 decades teaching games in both the vocational sector at TAFE Queensland. Also worked with the University of Canberra in their higher education programs, and now I'm the program coordinator for the University of Sunshine Coast for game design.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. So one thing, I guess, to establish a sort of frame of reference, one thing that we're going to hear today a lot is talk about higher education and vocational education. So for those who are not entirely sure where the difference lies between those two, could you please explain where we can draw the lines there? Justin, maybe let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. So having experience across both, I think primarily the main focus of vocational education is training for on the job, so on-the-job training. And if you look at the history of TAFEs and vocational training, starts with apprentices and then leads into on-the-job training across lots of different sectors. And I guess slightly varying is higher education, and that's more focused on personal growth and development of the individual learner across a broader sort of range of types and levels, not only industry. So for me, that's kind of the distinction that I can put most broadly and easily. Neil might have a different idea about that. What do you think now?
No, I think you've described it well. I think generally speaking, traditionally, vocational education has been very much, education for a vocation, a career, whereas university has been the pursuit of knowledge. So. But I guess that there is a lot of overlap now, and that's one of the things we're talking about in this discussion. But the differences and how that sort of impacts. At the end of the day, there's the games industry has graduates coming out, and maybe some different, depending on the pathway those students have been on, really impacts on what sort of. And then I guess at the end of the day, it does come down to the individual. There's individuals that will have gone through both pathways. There's individuals that have gone through vocational first and gone on to university. We see at AIA quite a few people that have done the reverse, and I'm sure you've seen them over the years as well, that have actually gone through to university and then decided they want to get some more focused.
I think we see different ways of integrating into workplaces as well at different levels and different roles, depending on their background. Yeah, definitely we've had them from in vocational and also higher education coming from industry to train and maybe change direction in their careers, but also school leavers are a big part of it as well. So it's quite a broad demographic of people we're trying to look after across both sectors, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just share my screen, which, can you see my screen?
Yep.
So is it the entire screen or just the?
Yeah, it seems to be everything.
No, it's all good. Thank you.
All good. So the AQF here is essentially the Australian Qualifications Network. So you can go check this out at aqf.edu.au, and it has all the different accredited, nationally accredited levels that are run across vocational, school system. So we all have a senior secondary certificate, whether that's in New South Wales, the HSC, or in the VCE, or the SACE, the SACE, and we can go on. But every state has their senior secondary, but then it goes into these certificates, which are vocational, and then we get to the diploma. The diploma is offered at both vocational and higher ed. and upwards. Upwards from diploma, pretty much, is all higher ed. And vocational education stops. We skip we do a diploma, we have an advanced diploma, and we do graduate certificates and graduate diplomas. Often they're called vocational graduate certificates or vocational graduate diplomas too. Occasionally you'll see that, but we don't have there isn't a vocational level 7. So that's sort of an interesting aspect of the two. But yeah, you keep going until you get to your level 10.
Yeah, and in recent years, we've seen a couple of vocational organisations bridging into the level 7 qualifications, haven't we? So I know TAFE Queensland's doing that. There's a couple of others, I think, around the country as well. And then, yeah, so the universities go on from level 8, 9 and 10. And that's the kind of the qualifications framework that we work to.
And each of those have, so you can, if you really want to get into the, the nitty gritty, which we're probably not going to delve into too much in this chat, but there's all types of different learning knowledge and skills that you develop in each of these. So it's all, people have sat down and worked out what levels how it translates into, you know, the sorts of things that students, how deeply they're getting into different subjects, and how much we should be really exploring and developing students' knowledge, skills, and abilities, and in a range of areas. You can sort of see here and how they apply those skills.
There's a number of
learning. So
a number of key words there, isn't there, Neil, that come out. So when you look down in the beginning there's words like apply and knowledge, skills.
Yeah.
And we'll see those keywords shift as we go through each category as you scroll down.
Oops. So a lot of students that will go on to a career in games, they may actually do something in high school, and that may be something, or as a short course or a part-time course, and that might be a certificate. Generally speaking, certificate 2 or 3. You can often do a certificate 2 and 3 as part of high school, or it could be just a 6-month part-time course. And they generally, you can see here, they say 1 to 2 years or 0, half a year to 1 year. So really depending on how that runs. And they're sort of foundation skills, generally speaking. So they're introducing, they could be relevant to games, they could be introduction to programming, starting to learn how to do 2D or 3D. They could be around writing, you know, explaining and pitching game concepts, those sorts of things. And then it moves on to certificate 4. Certificate 4 generally is a 1-year program. And if you were employing a tradesperson, many tradespeople that go through the apprenticeship schemes, they end up with a certificate 3 or 4 level qualification. And they would do that over 3 or 4 years. So there has been talk in the past of apprenticeships for the games industry, which is a really interesting idea, and I think it could work really well. But at the moment, one of the things to keep in mind is apprenticeships are linked to a certificate 3 or 4 level qualification. So, and generally speaking, the games industry is we're dealing with fairly complex information. There's years of work there, and we are probably looking more at least level 5 or up.
Yeah. In this level, the focus really is about having some technical theoretical knowledge and an application of that knowledge, but not really being self-directed and critical either. So it's difficult to imagine that in a games graduate not being able to do those things.
Absolutely. So we would see AIE and many other institutions, they'll often have students starting full-time study at a diploma level, and that can also be an exit point. So students can choose to finish their studies, but you will see students coming out with diplomas related to design and programming and art.
I think at some of the universities as well, just starting to go to this level as well with undergraduate certificates as entry-level courses. So we just introduced one at the University of Sunshine Coast this year, undergraduate certificate in game design, which covers to this kind of level.
So the diploma and then advanced diploma, An associate degree is the same as an advanced diploma, or very similar to an advanced diploma, but they're both at level 6. But the associate degree would be in a higher ed context, generally speaking. And then, and those, like a diploma, typically is a year to 2 years. An advanced diploma usually 1.5 years or a total of 2 years of learning, same with an associate degree. And then we go into the bachelor degrees and up. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is probably a good time to talk about the sorts of things that we tend to find graduates that come out with these qualifications and the different things they can do at that level.
Do you think it's worth mentioning just I guess the vocational programs are guided by things called training packages. So that reduces some scope and maybe introduces some extra scope. And they're typically led by industry reference groups where they go out and ask the industry. And I think at this level, that's kind of what informs some of your curriculum design, but you may go far beyond. I know AIE and we used to go beyond that and maybe add some value to it as well. But one of the other distinctions between the vocational training sector and higher education is that most higher education are self-accrediting authorities, and so they're not guided by training packages. So I think that's something that's interesting to see, that in vocational, you're working with these levels of knowledge and types of outcomes that are expected, but also you then got a training package guiding you to, I guess, add some constraints and maybe some focus to it as well.
Yeah, if I may, I think training packages are a good example of some of the constraints that educators operate under, in particular with a view to how to the cycle of the renewal. Neil, remind us, what's the sort of the cycle of renewal of training packages? When are they checked and updated?
Yeah, we've just had a bit of a renewal cycle. So the creative industries training package, and so that's the training package that students, there's a number of games related units in there, but that's things like the diploma of screen and media, the advanced diploma of screen and media. We use that one for our visual effects programs, but we also use the diploma for the first stage of our game art program, and we also use it within our design program as well. So it's every 5 years that they get together and they work through the units across all the different levels and all the different qualifications that are available. The ICT one has also just been released, so that's also useful across game programming. There's game programming specific units of competency that those training packages use. So like the training package will have, a diploma will have somewhere around, off the top of my head, it really depends on the package, but could have 15 units of competency, and each unit of competency is written at a level. You'll see the AQF level will be in the number. So the number.
You find that 5-year cycle a bit challenging in games? I mean, games technology moves pretty fast. I remember being in vocational training, it'd go every 5 years or so, but by the time it trickles down through into our curriculum and then into our classrooms, it'd be almost 6 to 7 years, and technology would shift, and ways of working in industry and industry expectations would shift quite a lot. So it really took the teaching staff had to really be on their toes with how to actually keep up with what's going on, not just be looking at training packages to inform their practice.
Yeah, I don't think, like, the training packages are written in such a way that they don't refer to any specific skills or technologies. So they'll say, for example, use advanced techniques for 3D modeling, or use object-oriented programming languages, but they won't specify, or they'll reference currency, so that students actually go have to find out what is the current standard within the industry for an engine or for a modelling package, and those sorts of things. So they are trying to make it fairly broad,
yeah. But
at the same time, it does allow for a little bit of leeway in terms of it is very much on the provider to ensure that.
So you can contextualize that as the teacher and update it as you go, but it really requires engagement with industry to keep the staff.
That's the key.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that You don't have to use training packages, even though it's strongly encouraged, and it's certainly very easy to use a training package. If you're an accredited provider, you can use that training package and add that qualification to your scope.
Is training package linked to funding?
The training packages generally, when they release funding, that they will identify qualifications that are from training packages, and they'll apply them to funding. Yeah. So we have our own accredited course. We have an advanced diploma of professional game development, which we actually had the first game specific qualification in the world. So this is one of the examples why training packages are not always fantastic, because they're not, as you said, they're trying to cover entire industries, but we wrote our one. It was the first in the world, so there wasn't a training. We had to write it because there wasn't anything around to be used. And quite often you will see.
I remember when that happened.
Educators and trainers.
Yes, actually.
Like the first cybersecurity course, right, was a vocational qualification. We didn't write that one, but that was up and running. And I think but there is support now within training packages for cybersecurity courses, and there's obviously funding associated with those. But you can still go out if you feel that the training package doesn't cover the sort of employment outcomes and specific skills and knowledge that industry is demanding. You can still go out and write your own one, and AIE still has its own one, and a number of other providers have their own. But it certainly is a lot more work because you need to justify why that needs to exist.
So justifying that requires an industry reference group, which is one of the challenges for us to actually, when we're doing at either level, whether it be a curriculum advisory group that we might run in higher education, or whether it be industry reference group that you run in vocational training. Industry needs to help inform and actually justify our changes to keep our curriculum updated and valid and valuable in order to get our graduate attributes in line with employment requirements. So that's one of the challenges I think we face.
And, I think, Justin, you already mentioned a couple of higher education frameworks there as well in terms of, graduate attributes and so on.
Yeah.